We are now on Daf Lamed Beis, and we're describing the minhag that Rabbi Chanina recommended to his Talmidim, Bo v'neitze l'kras kala malkusa. Let's go out, and the Arizal understood, let's go out into the fields in order to makabel pnei Shabbos. This is called Kabbalah Shabbos. We invite the Shabbos like a person would be makabel pnei HaMelech, although here it says Malka, but apparently the Rambam Shita is that it's a Melech. Shabbos is compared to a Melech. Umikan diek Rabbeinu HaArizal shetzarch lotzes michutz la'ir l'sada l'kabel Shabbos. And here the Eitz Yosef, as a true blue Yeki, asks the question: why is the Shabbos coming through the Soda that we have to go out to the Soda? And if it says Bo v'neitze, maybe it means that we should camp out outside. Bo v'neitze ad who knows when. But in any event, this is the Shita of the Arizal, and there are deeper meanings behind it. Now, as we said here, the Kala Malkusa means the princess or the queen, and apparently there are two dimensions to the Shabbos. Shabbos on the one in a Kala. Kala always has a bracha, and the Shabbos brings a bracha. But on the other hand, Shabbos is also called Malkusa, Melech. And what does that mean? With regard to a melech, we have halacha that the melech has to be nivdal from a shar ha'am. In many ways, he has to be different than the rest of the nation. And Shabbos is also nivdeles mishar yimei hashavua. By the way, there are poskim who say that once you go out l'kras Shabbos Malkusa, and as we see Amri l'kras Shabbos Kala Malkusa Rabbi Yanei Misate v'koi v'yom boi chala, poskim are of the opinion, Magen Avram quotes it, that he was yotze the mitzvah of Kiddush. Zochres Yom Shabbos l'kadsho. L'kadsho means to demonstrate the shvach and the unique nature of Shabbos, which he did by going out and saying boi kala, boi kala. The Marsha says, why was it that Rav Yanai was not Yotzi l'kras Shabbos like Rav Chanina? He came into Shabbos Hikala, Knesset Yisrael. Rav Chanina ha Yotzi l'kras Shabbos kodem knisasa. So the Hisatfus is before Shabbos enters. And now he's like being machnas the kala into the chuppah. Therefore, he was yotzi l'krasa kechasan a yotzi l'kras kalaso kodem achuppah. Rabbi Yanai, on the other hand, darko hayolomar kein acher knisa Shabbos. Vaya omed bimkomo kederech achasan acher achuppah shakala bo etzla. So just like there's a mitzvah lotzes lekabel pnei Shabbos, there's also a mitzvah l'troach v'lorutz b'erev Shabbos l'hochin tzorchi Shabbos, and therefore we pater him up from damages if he was mazik b'shogeg. The Mishnah says the following: Hamavakeya v'rshus harav. The man is chopping wood in the middle of a public thoroughfare, and a piece of that wood flies off, and hizik v'rshus hayachid. It entered into some private property, some private domain, and it injured him, or just the opposite. He was mevakea the eitzim b'shus hayochid, and a piece of wood flew off and was mazik someone in b'shus harab. Or b'shus hayochid v'hizik b'shus hayochid. He was mevakea, and a piece damaged another person in a private domain. In all these cases, chayav. And the Gemara now is going to explain why we need all three cases. Now, let's keep in mind that we're talking about Adam HaMazik. Why? HaMazik mikolcho nidon kemazik miguf begufo. And therefore, in all these cases, he'd be chayav, even if he's a shogeg, because other mudli olam bein b'shogig bein b'meiz, and that's in the name of the Mukhi Yosef. Utzricha. I would have said that only in such cases chayav mishum teshchichi rabin, because he sent flying a piece of wood into a public domain, and he can expect that public domain would be full of passers-by. But maybe if he's mevaker mishusay rabin, mishusay yachid, and a piece flies off from mishusay rabin and damages someone in a private domain, lo shchichi rabin, what are the chances that somebody will be walking in the mishusay yachid just at that moment and get damaged? I would say in that case we shouldn't be mechayev the mevaker. But let's go on. V'itana, and if we only had mishusay rabin mishusay yachid, so he was cutting the wood in Rosh Hashanah and Rosh Hashanah. And you know why he's chayav there? Because Mishum Di'ikara Lo B'Reshus Ha'Ovid. He had no right, and he was not within his allowance to cut and to chop up wood in a public domain. Ein Adam Rashoy Levaker Eitzim B'Reshus Ha'Rabin. Therefore he's chayav on the zaken. Avol B'Reshus Ha'Yachid B'Reshus Ha'Rabin. There, when he's cutting wood in his own backyard, and a piece flies out to Rosh Hashanah, the B'Reshus Ha'Ovid, he was perfectly within his rights to chop down the log, the tree, in his own private domain. Aim alone. Perhaps in this case we would say he's not chayav. And if the Mishnah had told me these two dinim, number one, mevaker b'Rosh Hashanah v'hizik b'Rosh Hashanah. Number two, mevaker b'Rosh Hashanah v'hizik b'Rosh Hashanah, we would have said that in each one of these cases, there's a special reason why he's chayav, why the mevaker is chayav. In the case of Rosh Hashanah, and a piece flew out into Rosh Hashanah mishum deshchichi rabim, as we said before, that was a terrible pshia on his part, knowing full well that the rabbim is full of people. In the case where it flies out from Rosh Hashanah and hits someone in Rosh Hashanah mishum dishalo b'rshus, that his bekia, his cutting up the wood in Rosh Hashanah was illegal. In the case where he chops the trees in his own private yard and it flies out to Yenim, to the neighbor's backyard, so we have the two strikes that we mentioned before are both neutralized. Number one, lo shchichi rabin, it's Rosh Hashanah. Number two, meikar rishus, the act of bikua was beheta. You say, I might think that he doesn't have to pay damages. Tricha, the Mishnah has to teach me that even in this case, he pays damages. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in the Brisa. Hanichnas lechanuso shel nagar shel b'reshus. A man comes into a carpenter. Vinitza bakas. V'tavcha al panav umes. A piece of wood goes flying out as the carpenter is chopping his wood, and it hits this man on his head and he dies. Hota, the nagar doesn't even have to go into gults. Why? Because this person who entered into the chanus, shalo b'rshus, he had no right to go in there. He basically committed a kind of quasi-suicide. But if on the other hand the nagar invited this person to enter into his nagariya, then chayev, then the nagar is chayev. In other words, when the carpenter invites someone to enter into his shop, his carpet shop, he is accepting upon himself absolute responsibility to make sure that no one gets hurt. Certainly not the person that he invited. My son lives on a street in Yerushalayim called Rehov Najara, which is the Arabic name for Nagar. Interesting how similar it is in both languages. Apparently that strip of land had many carpentry shops. The Gemara says, "My chayev." When the carpenter was responsible for killing a person, my chayev. So we're going to discuss two issues here. One is whether he's chayev as a rotzeh pishogi and he has to go into golos. And number two, does he pay damages? And if so, what damages does he pay? Omer Rab Yossi Rab Chanina Chayav B'Daled Dvarim. In other words, Kolcho is considered like Gufo, and it's as if he damaged him via dime, and he pays like a Chova B'Chavero for Nezek Tzar Ripuy and Sheves. If the person died, however, Potter Migolos. Why? Why shouldn't it be Chayav Golos? Lefisha Ein Adome Liyar, the classic case as described in the Torah of Rotzeach Peshogi is Chayav Golos in Dvarim Yutes is Asher Yavos Re'eu B'Yar Lachtov Eitzim. So the example the Torah gives, the scenario, is Chativas Eitzim B'Yar. And what's unique about Yar? Yar Zel Rishus Nichnas v'Zel Rishus Nichnas. Each one has permission to use the Yar. It's open for everyone. And that's a Rishus HaRabim. And therefore we're going to treat this case as a case of Korov La'onis. But Zeh Rishus Chaveru Nichnas. I'm sorry, I stopped in the middle of a sentence here. So therefore, Zeh Rishus Nichnas, V'Zeh Rishus Nichnas, V'Zeh Rishus Chaveru Nichnas. So in the case of a Yar, they both entered into the Yar legally, legitimately, without any one of them having more responsibility than the other. And that's when the Torah says, if you killed somebody, V'Shogeg, you go into your mikvah. But in the case of someone who entered into the Nagaria, as we call it, L'Rishus Chaveru Nichnas, he's entering into the domain of another Jew, in this case, the Nagar. And therefore, the owner of the Nagar is not Chayav Golos. So Rav asks the obvious question. This is counterintuitive. Kal v'chomer. Uma yar shezel daitu nichnas, zel daitu nichnas. Each one had legitimate rights to enter into the forest. Nevertheless, nasa kimisha nichnas ledas chavero v'gola. Right? It's as if the other one, meaning the Rotzeach, had, so to speak, invited the Nirtzach to enter into his Rishus, and therefore he holds responsibility. And his goal is Zeshel Das Chaver Nichnas Lo Kolshkein. In the case where the Nagar invited the Nirtzach to come into his Nagaria, that's Bershus Chaver Nichnas. How much more so the Nagar should be Chayav Golos? The Gemara is unaware at this point of a concept called Karov Lemezid. Elam Arava Mai Potami Golos to Lo Sagi Levi Golos. Golos is at one level of punishment, at another level it is a boon, a gift, a machape. And if someone is Karov Lemezid, he doesn't deserve to go into Golos and experience kapara. To Lo Sagi Levi Golos. V'hainu Taima de Rav Yossi Rav Chanina Mishum Dahavi Le Shoge Karov Lemezid. Since the Nagar had invited the Nirtzach to enter into his Nagaria, and therefore he has to be very, very careful, then he's Karov Lemezid if he kills the person that he invited into his Nagaria. And therefore Golos will not be meaningful to generate a kapara. Because Golos is only meaningful and effective for a kaparas shogeg, and he's Karov Lemezid. Masiv Rava says, I have a kasha. Are you telling me that Shogeg Karov Lemezid doesn't go into Golos? What about Masechet Makis Daf Chav Beis Amid Beis? With regard to the din of a Shliach Bezdin who is meting out 39 lashes to a Baal Avera, and Nebuchadnezzar added one extra lash, and the guy died. Hosif lo ritzua achas umeis hareze golal yoda. Wouldn't this be Karov Lemezid? I mean, how careless can you be? The guy is about to die, and you hit him with an extra 40th lash. V'ahacha to shogi Karov Lemezid uvi boile asukya daite the maisi inish bechad ritzua, that this person could never die with one ritzua, one makkah. And yet, nevertheless, the Gemara establishes that Harei Ze Gola. He does go into Golos. How could someone who's Karov Lemezid go into Golos? And the Gemara answers, Amar Rav Shimi min Arda, the toy b'minyan. This is not a case of Karv Lemezid. This is a real case of Shogeg. Why? Because as he was counting the 39 lashes, he made a mistake. And it doesn't have to be 39. There's always a din of umdana, but whatever they shots them up, he got mistaken in the counting. And he added one extra makkah. That's considered a tos. That's considered a shogeg. It's not Karov Lemez, and therefore he goes into goals. Tofle Rav Besantli. Rav was not happy with this answer. Amalei Atu Hu Mani. You're assuming that he, the Shliach Bezdin, who's meeting out the lashes, he's the one who counts. But Tanya the Bryce establishes that Gadol Shabbat Kore. It's the leader of the Bezdin, the Dayan, who counts, as it says in the parsha in Dvarim Chavches veHifla Shemes Makoscha and Vasheni Mona. And there'll be another Dayan who's counting away. So the first Dayan is Kore. Kore means he reads the parsha. The second one is counting. And the Shlishi, the third Dayan, says to the Shliach, Hakeu, now's the time to hit him. So how is it possible that there was a tos on the part of Shliach Bezdin in the Minyan of Malchus? The system is a perfect system. It's impossible to have a tos. The Dayan himself made a mistake in the Minyan of Malchus. As he's counting the number of Malchus, he made a mistake. And the Shliach Bezdin knew that there was a certain number of Malchus that they had done the Umdana. And if he added one extra Makkah, then he was relying on the Dayan in the counting. And therefore he's a Shogeg. What about the Gemara Malchus Tavches that Hazorik as a Evelishus Rabin Vahara, a person killed b'shogeg, harez gola. V'ahacha shogeg karv lemezidu. Ti boile asuke daite. He should have realized that Rishus Rabin shchichei inchi. And how is it possible that he threw a stone, a dangerous stone, into Rishus Rabin? Uktani harez gola. So we see clearly that in a case of Karv Lemezid, he goes into Golos and he achieves Kapara. And the answers, Amar of Shmuel Bar Yitzchak, Besoser es Koslo. We're not talking about a case of a man who throws a gigantic boulder into Rosh Hashanah. We're talking about a person who's knocking down his wall. He's demolishing his wall. And one of the stones from the wall falls on someone who's walking Rosh Hashanah and kills him. That is not considered Karv Lemezid. That is a perfect shogeg. In fact, the Gemara, is this really a perfect shogeg? Okay, you're knocking down your wall. But that doesn't mean that you can kill somebody. You should be more careful. And now we go through a whole rigmarole. The Gemara says, it was during the nighttime. And people are not inhabiting the Rishus Harabim at night. Therefore, that's not called Karv Lemezid. The Gemara asks again, this is still Karv Lemezid, even at night. He shouldn't have washed off the possibility that somebody might be walking there and get killed. Gemara answers, what was he doing? He was demolishing his wall at night. I'm sorry. He was not demolishing his wall at night, as we said earlier, but rather he was demolishing it during the day. But he wasn't sending the rocks flying into the city, but rather into the dumpster, so to speak, the ashpa. Now again, ashpa in the Gemara's language, as we all know, is not what we call ashpa today in modern Hebrew. We're not talking about a garbage pail. Ashpa was an what's it called in English? An outhouse, I think you call it in English. I'm not sure. And that's where people used to go to defecate. It was like it's like a public bathroom, toilet. So the Gemara asks, wait a minute, You're telling me he's not karov lemezid. What kind of ashba are you talking about? Either shlichi be'ravim, then he's karov lemezid. V'lo shlichi be'ravim onusu. Then we have another halacha that exempts a person from golus, not because he doesn't deserve the kapara, but because he doesn't deserve the onish. He was karov leonis. So if he didn't anticipate that anyone would be using the ashba, because we're talking about an ashba, I don't know, it's out there and I don't know where it is, but very few people inhabit and use the ashba, then he's an onus. So why is it that Sosa's Koslo is going to be, the little ashba is going to be Chaim Golos? By the way, in English law, the subject that we're discussing today is what's called manslaughter. Like, for example, if you jump a red light and you kill somebody, so that's like third degree or second degree murder because you were shogeg. So I would say that manslaughter, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm certainly not a Talmud Chacham, but I would say that manslaughter is karov lemezid. He jumped a red light and killed somebody. But Balayla, that might be a chiyuv of shogeg and golos. Like, for example, here in Israel, they have a mavar chatzaya. Rabbi, do you drive? I forget. You do drive. So I find personally, I don't know if you resonate, that this mavar chatzaya is horrible. First of all, half the time it's so rubbed out, you don't even notice it. And second of all, like here in Beit Shemesh, it's all kikar, one after the other. And you don't, and at night, you don't even know where a person's going to pop up. And they think, well, I'm crossing at a mavar chatzaya. It's not my responsibility. It's very, very dangerous. And I think this is a system all over Europe. I don't know. Somebody has to come up with a better system, in my humble opinion. In any event, it's this midway case. People don't usually use the ashpa at night. Maybe it's a security issue. They're afraid to do it at night. But ikad mikri v'yosef, if he has a pressing need, to go to the bathroom, he'll go at night. And therefore, mezid lo havi, can't call him mezid da ein asui liponis bayom. But honest nami lo havi da ikad mikri v'yosef. Oh, so I made a slight mistake. What I mean to say is that people use this outhouse at night because no one sees them, so they're not embarrassed. During the day, it's rare for a person, unless he's really in an emergency situation, to make use of the ashpa during the day. So therefore, if he killed someone during the day, when he was Sosa's Koslo Bayom, then he's not mazid because he didn't expect anyone to be there by day. On the other hand, he's not an onus, you're not a knapper because there are people who go there during the day as well. Okay, so this is Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina, the Sefer the Brisa. It's a person who enters into the house of a Nagar Birshus. He was invited in, and Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina says that he's chayav for Dalet Dvarim, but he's part of from Golos because he's Karol Mezid. Rabbi Papish made the Rav Masliya Reisha. He has a different take on Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina. And Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina was talking about the Reisha of the Brisa. What does it say in the Reisha of the Brisa? Hanichtas chanusa shel nagar shelo bershus v'nitzel b'kas v'tovchal parav meis potu. And why is that? Because the person had no right to go into the nagariyat. He wasn't invited in. In effect, he was trespassing, and therefore the nagar doesn't have to pay damages. And on that, Omar Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina chayav b'dvarim potu migolos. He does not have to go into golos. And this would be a case where he's potter from golos because he's karvali ones. But on the other hand, we said that other muadli olam, as far as Dalet Dvarim, he pays bein v'onis, bein v'ratzon, bein v'mezid, bein v'shogeg. Mind the Masilias Sefer, whoever interprets, like we saw Rav Papa, that Rabbi Yossi was commenting on the Sefer the Brisa in a case where a person enters into, not Rabbi Yossi, not Rav Papa Shmei the Ram. But the first interpretation, that we're going back to the Seifa, which is the case where he was invited into the Nagaria Birshus, and Rabbi Yossi holds he's potem from Golus, is Kolshkein Aresha. If the person entered into the Nagar Shalo Birshus, then certainly he should be potem. So therefore, the first understanding would certainly accept Rav Papa's halach, no machlokas. But in the reverse order, man demasi le aresha, if you interpret like Rav Papa did, that Rav Yossi is going back on the Resha, which is the case of Shalo B'Rshus, then Rav Papa would reject Aval HaSeifa Keved B'Rshus Chayav Golus. Since the Nagar had invited the victim to enter into the Nagaria and he killed him, he's Chayav Golus. In fact, the Gemara, Mi Chayav Golus Vatanya, HaNichlas Chanusa Shal Napach V'Nitza Nitzotzos V'Tovcha Lo Panav V'Meis Potur V'Afilu Nichlas B'Rshus. And the Gemara answers Hachamay Askinon B'Shulya Denagri or Denafcha. So he was an apprentice of the blacksmith, and he was learning the trade, and therefore you're potter from Golus if he killed him. What does he deserve to die? That the blacksmith doesn't have to go into Golus? And the Gemara answers, it's a 9 to 5 deal. At 5 o'clock, go home. And no, the apprentice, the Shulya, decides he's going to stay on. So the Gemara asks, okay, fine. The Nafach was begging him to go home. He was pushing him and pressuring him. But that doesn't mean that he deserves to die if he stays on. And the Gemara answers, the Nafach was under the mistaken impression that he had already left. Therefore, he wasn't careful with the Nitzotzos, and he was Karv La'onis. Okay, so why don't you describe that same reality even in the case of someone else? It doesn't have to be a Shulya Denafche. And the Gemara answers on the top of Lamed Gimel, Acher Lesle E Mosa Derabe. But hi, this Talmud, this Shulya, right? He's Islay E Mosa Derabe. So in other words, if you're telling someone to get out, maybe he'll listen to you and he'll get out, maybe he won't. But if you're telling your own student, your own apprentice, who has Amos Rabo Olav, you have every right to assume that he obliged what you said and he left the premises, and therefore, if you killed him, you are an onus. Okay, so Mitzvah Hashem, we'll pick this up on Lamed Gimel tomorrow. Have a great day. Thank you so much.